Hi, James here from Raisley, and thank you for those who made it to our appeal workshop. For those who couldn't make it, we've uploaded this content here on YouTube for you to enjoy. Now, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, and be sure to leave comments on how we can improve our workshops more and any other questions you may have about using Raisley. Apart from that, enjoy the content. All right. Well, I think we might as well just get into it and see what we come up with. At the moment, let me say welcome. It is great to have you here. My name is James Stinson. I'm one of the lead educators at Raisley, and it is super fun. We get to sort of do this experience this morning. We thought, as we're sort of wrestling through sort of how we do webinars and workshops, that we try something just a little bit different. Now, that's a little bit my personality in the sense of I love seeing people. And typically with a webinar, you feel like you're speaking to yourself. So I thought, hell, why not? Let's just throw a normal meeting out there so people can see the Raisley community. You guys can see each other. I can see you. You can see me. And it's going to just provide us a little bit more interaction as we sort of go through as well. Now, what are we doing this morning? We're doing a whole bunch of stuff on appeal templates. Raisley recently released a new appeal template, which we're really excited about. And this webinar is all about just sort of focusing in on how you can upskill and create a really great appeal campaign, but very, very quickly. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing today. I'll go through some of the details in just a moment. But before we really get into it, I just want to acknowledge the traditional owners of our lands within Australia and just acknowledge the elders past and present who are connected to land and sea and community. And Raisley, we want to acknowledge the First Nations people of our country, as it really is a significant thing for us to do. Thank you for meeting this morning. Thanks for taking some time out for this webinar. And a couple of just rules of engagement that we're going to sort of be doing. The first one is if you can stay on mute, that would be great. It's not because we don't want to hear your voice. It's just because there's going to be a lot of us. And it just makes it a little bit easier if we're not all sort of crowding on with the mute there. So just good practice, put that on. But we thought we'd do something a little bit different with this webinar and make it a little bit more interactive. And there's going to be moments that I'm going to be pausing for a bit of a Q&A time. Now, like if you've sort of been on a Zoom meeting before, it's a little bit first in, first serve. So the way when I pause for a Q&A time, if you have a question, I'd love you to raise your hand. That's not physically, that's on actual Zoom. And if you do that, it just means that I can order everyone across there. And I'm just going to ask you to unmute and tell me a question. I want to know what it is. And if it's a goodie, I'll be able to answer it quickly. If it's more of a lengthy one, I may push that out a little bit later on to the post sort of webinar email that you'll receive as well, or some more Q&A stuff that's going to be up on our YouTube channel. So there's going to be a lot of question time for that. So if you do have questions, please do raise your hand. I'm going to see if I can get to the top 5, and we'll see sort of where we go after that. If your question doesn't get answered, I'm so sorry. I'd love to answer everyone's questions, but we are going to be posting opportunities for people to put questions up on YouTube channel and also within support as well. So there will be opportunity. Can I ask that you do be polite, though? If you do have a question, you just get one, all right? Don't hold the stage. Just get one question, so save it for a good one and see how you go. I hope it's not wasted. We'll see what happens. Now, what we're going to be doing, I'm just sort of sorting out my screen over here, is any other rules of engagement. And would love you to react as well. If you think something's good, put an emoji in there. That would be fantastic. Or let us know in the sort of chat feed. We've got some of our wonderful colleagues on this chat. We've got Tom, our CEO, and Georgie here in marketing. And we've got Helga and Kylie also, who are part of our customer success team. And they're going to be sort of managing the chat as well. So if you do put things in the chat, don't put questions in there. But if you do put things in the chat, they would love to engage with you around that. So put some comments or some reactions. That would be really, really good as we sort of dive in. Now, can everyone sort of hear me and pay attention? If you give me maybe a thumbs up on an emoji or even a waving of the hands, that would be really good. Yeah, Helga's done it. Super, lots of people. Good, wonderful. We'll dive in. This is going to be a bit of fun. We'll see how we go. Let's give it a crack. So where we're starting today is we're going to be looking at appeal campaigns. And the very first question we've got to ask ourselves is kind of what is an appeal campaign? And there's two answers to it. First of all, there's one answer that you would know very, very well if you're part of a charity or not-for-profit. That an appeal campaign is really just an appeal for those to donate to a particular cause that you have going on. Now, that cause may be a regular campaign that you do every year at a certain time, or it may just be a one-off based on a project need or something like that. The other side of appeal, though, is we need to look at what it means on a website end, because an appeal is a little bit different on a website end. An appeal on a website end really is what we call this a static website. It's just a static page that has a landing page that people can go to. It's got stuff on there and people can just interact directly with it. An appeal campaign is different than a peer-to-peer campaign. A peer-to-peer campaign, as you know in your world, is one where you invite fundraisers to engage and to raise money themselves and to create teams and to use their talents or fitness or whatever it is to use that and raise money for it. On a website end, though, a peer-to-peer campaign is actually a dynamic campaign where we set them up a whole bunch of templates that people can create their own pages and all this kind of stuff on there as well. So the major difference that you see when you come on board with Raisely is that most of the templates are going to be based around an appeal template, or it's going to be based around a peer-to-peer template. What we mean by that is that an appeal template is typically static. So one of the things you can do on that is if you go into your appeal campaign and just go to pages, you'll see very clearly there's kind of like one page or one major page for an appeal. It's just your home page. Whereas a peer-to-peer campaign will have a whole bunch of different pages around that sort of act dynamically to enable people to sign up and create their own page and that kind of stuff. So that's a little bit about sort of peer-to-peer and appeal sort of campaigns. But what about the templates? Now, one of the fun things at Raisely is that we've got an incredible template team that work tirelessly to help make your life really easy. And the way they do that is by creating templates that you can almost plug and play to create an appeal campaign just really, really quickly. Now, they sort of go through a whole bunch of thinking around what that page should be and how the layout should be and what the template should be in regards to how it communicates, also how it's designed, how it responds to mobile, how it's going to sort of help all your integrations and things like that. And they design a template that's ready to go that you can grab and just use. We love this team. And one of the exciting things with Raisely is that team always continues to get invested in. We're going to be wanting to make more templates to make your life easier and to make some options of just putting in your styling and have a ready-to-go campaign very, very quickly. So we were really excited when they released just recently our newest appeal campaign template. One, because the design of it was fantastic, and two, it was a little bit clearer in regards to its narrative than the previous one. And it's really easy to style. It's got some really cool little features in there, which is great. It's very mobile responsive. And the thing I love most about it is you can really kind of make it your own really quick. And so that's kind of what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to dive in and we're going to look at the appeal template and have a bit of a play. And you can have some questions on that. So we love the template team. We love this new release that they've just put out. And we're excited to sort of make your life easier. And so you can spend a lot more time on the people work that happens within charities and fundraising as well. All right, I'm going to pause there. I've talking a lot very, very quickly. I'm going to open up for Q&A. Does anyone have sort of any quick little Q&A things that they may want to sort of kick off with this? Just raise your hand and I'm going to just ask you to unmute and you can ask a question in regards to appeal templates or appeal campaigns. Go for it. Has anyone got any questions? No, it's cricket so far. No one's got anything. Is it because it's only 10 o'clock in the morning? Anyone have any questions about appeal templates, appeal campaigns? No? Great. We're warming up. I'm going to give you like 10 more seconds to put something in. If you don't, that's cool. All right, I love talking, right? So you're just going to get me for another little spell. Let's get stuck into it. All right, so what we want to do next is actually dive in and have a look at what is some of the recommendations into creating a good appeal template and an appeal campaign within Razorly. So let me just quickly switch my screen over. Hopefully you can all see that. I'm going to get rid of this. Can everyone just thumbs up? Can you see my screen pretty well? Can you see me pretty well? Yep, good. Fantastic. Okay. What I've done is just logged into my account. Now, I've got a whole bunch of templates in there, but most likely it's probably pretty similar to yours as well. Now, there's two ways to start a new campaign. And most people only know there's one. And that's typically you go up and you go, great, I'm going to click a new campaign and start that out. That's a great way, and you can just start from scratch, or you can pick a template and away you go. But I just want to show you another way that I do all the time. It just saves me so much time, and I'm amazed by how many customers just don't know how simple it is and how quick it is. And that is duplicating a campaign. So what I have, if I've already got prepared for me a default template in which if I ever want to create a campaign, I just duplicate it. Now, why would we do that? The main reason is it's because it's going to save all your design settings. Design settings are one of the things that takes you time. And it is great if you don't have to worry about doing it all again. And so if you just set up a great sort of basic template that has all your design features in it, such as your brand and your fonts and all that kind of stuff, it means you just have to duplicate it out and away you go. That's just going to save a lot more time for you. And so my big encouragement is create a few templates. If you've got a template for appeal campaigns or a template for peer-to-peer campaigns, that you just do some of the raw basics on, it's going to save you a ton of time. Now, this is my one that I've prepared earlier, so do forgive me. I can go into my appeal template. And one of the things that I actually do on this is if I go into pages, I actually create what I call a style guide. And this gives me a really, really quick look at all of my styles that I've applied to the brand settings. This is brilliant because it just means that you can quickly visualize everything that's in your design settings. So if you've got all your settings already in there, you just need to duplicate your campaign with this in it, and away you go. Now, with the style guide, I've got a great little video on our YouTube channel on how to create a style guide. So I encourage you to go into that, but I'll be referencing it a couple of times here as well. But I just want to mention that it's great practice to duplicate a template from a template. It's going to save you lots of time and that. But say if you don't, let me quickly just go into new campaign. And here's all your templates that you can go into. And the new one we have here is donation appeal. So if I simply select this, I'm going to get the campaign options that will come up. One thing that stumps a lot of people when they sort of go through this is, what should I name it? And even more so, what should my URL be? This is a funny one because most people think your URL is really important. And it used to be. It used to be really important because your URL, if you enter it, it may say here that, sorry, you can't have that URL, that the availability is not there. And you're like, damn it, I really, really want that URL in there. Now, the reason it's not important these days is because most of our marketing doesn't rely on people remembering what the URL is. We kind of used to, and we all know what google.com is. But in most cases, marketing these days is pushed towards emails or social media, which all have links in them that take them directly to the campaign. So if you go in here and your URL is not available, don't fret. Just make up anything. If you have a little bit of sense, that would be great. But don't worry too much about it because most of your marketing doesn't actually need a really, really memorable URL. If you're really concerned about it, though, you can make it as a custom domain. And that's really simple to do. We have some support documents on how to make a custom domain. Using subdomains is a really good option as well if you want it to be a bit more memorable. But a lot of people just get stumped and thinking it's not going to be memorable. Most of your marketing doesn't rely on it. So I just wouldn't worry about it too much. Just make sure your naming conventions are fine as well. So what I've done here is I've created one I'm going to use earlier. And the very first thing I do in any campaign when I build it is go into the brand settings. Now, if I go into design, I'm going to have my brand settings in there, and that's going to be sort of my logos, my colors, my fonts, and my buttons that are all going to be in there. Now, one of the things is, before you enter this sort of space, be prepared. It's really helpful to prepare yourself, have the right assets that you will need as well. So one of the things that I always prepare is I have about 5 images that I want to be using. Don't get heaps, just get 5. You only need 5 for most campaigns. And utilize stock imagery if you need to. There's some great free resources out there. One of the ones I use a lot for stock imagery is Pexels, but we're going to put a link to a whole bunch of resources available for you to sort of help you design and get some freebies out of that. But the best thing is prepare yourself earlier. Now, here's a really, really cool trick that you may not have seen yet because it only just got released. One of the things that Razy recently did is we changed our media library to now be global, or basically to be organizational level. So if I go out of my campaigns and go into organization and scroll down to media library, which is a new little feature, I now have a media library that I can use for every single campaign. This is amazing because it's a huge time saver, because you can put all your brand assets, such as your logos, your favicons, and all those kind of different things in there, and use them for every campaign, which is just brilliant. So that means that when you go to your media library for a particular campaign, you're only seeing the images you want. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put in my favicon into there. Let's upload file, favicon. What else we got? And 2 of my campaign logos. Great, they're all in there. Now I can use those for every single campaign. Huge time saver, really, really cool. So that's using the organization media library. Now let me go back into my campaign, and if I go to design, and if I go to media library, there's nothing there at the moment. So I'm going to upload just quickly a couple of images that I'm going to need as well. So let me just go to upload, and I'm going to upload the 5 images. Actually, I've only got 3 on this one, I think. No, 4. And a hero image, and put those in nice and simply. So they're in our media library. One of my big suggestions quickly, and I'm rushing through this, but I hope you're digesting, it's going to be on YouTube later. But one of the things I see people do so much is not compress their images before they upload them. It's actually a really important step to do. The reason so is because your website will run faster and be a much better user experience. My favorite is a little program called tinypng.com. It's got a cute little panda on it, and it means that you can just upload your images to that as long as they're under 5 megabytes, and they'll compress them really, really well. I recommend it. It's a great little piece of online software called tinypng. Adobe has another one called Adobe Resizer, which I also love. It's kind of a really good one. It allows you to do maybe a little bit extra, and it's all free. So before you upload any image, make sure you compress them. It just helps your speed of your website a ton. All right. Now we want to go into brand. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to change our logo out. So the first thing to do is just remove the logo. And here, as you can see, I now have my organization media. So I'm just going to click on my logo. Wonderful. Brand colors. Isn't that crazy? I actually did not. I completely forgot to actually save our brand colors out, and I do not remember off the top of my head. So what I'm going to do, I'll show you a cool little trick. If you go into Ray, I'm going to go to razy.com, and we'll just pick a couple. There's a really cool little Chrome extension that I use called Colorzilla. And what it allows me to do, it allows me to pick a color from the page. I'll pick that one, and it copies it to the clipboard. Then what I can just do is in here, paste that in and save. I know it's not the exact right one, so team, forgive me, particularly marketing, forgive me, but for the sake of the demonstration, I think we'll do okay. Make sure you select save changes, and I'm going to go into a secondary color. I'm going to change that one out. What do I want for that one? Does Razy have something fun I can use? We kind of have a blue there. I might pick that one. So let me use Colorzilla again, pick from the page. That one will do. And I'm going to paste that into, change this, and save. Now, a wonderful, really cool tip when you're picking brand colors is there's a couple of ways you can do it. In most cases, your organization already has brand colors that you will use, typically primary and secondary colors particularly. My encouragement is to use them. You want your appeal campaign to be very recognizable because your brand will build trust. One cool thing you can do, though, is sometimes you want maybe an accent color or another color to use as well to sort of just delineate it a little bit from, say, other campaigns you're doing. So you can always add in another color that you can find. A really, really cool piece of software, online software I love, is a website called coolers.com. This is one of my favorites. My wife, who's a designer, put me onto this one. And you can start a generator. And what it does, it will generate colors for you based on things that complement one another. Really helpful. So you can put your brand colors in there, maybe 2 or 3 of them, and then hit spacebar, and it will generate a new color that might be very different that you could use for your campaign as well. So coolers and color generators like this are really helpful to sort of find complementary colors that I really, really recommend. There's another one called humint.com, which is a little bit more visual, and that's sort of something nice to use as well. Another really good tip would be if you do have a hero image that you are using for your website, color pick on that, because it's going to be sort of really complementary along that. So if you really rushed and you're just trying to work out what colors to pick, whatever hero image you pick, just use 2 colors from that hero image. The nice part is if you do that, it'll all sort of fall in quite nicely and work really, really well. So now favicon is another thing there. Favicon is that little small icon up the top, always good to put in. People wonder how to actually get your favicon. That's such a great question. I'll post it on our YouTube video of this when we finish, but Google actually have a URL that you can just copy and paste into your browser, and it'll automatically download your favicon from that site. So really, really easy to actually do. But I've saved that one there. Wonderful. And now I'm going to pick my campaign image. Now, I love orangutans. I love everything about them, but I am going to change the theme up on this. I'm going to pick a different one that I'm going to be using. And away I go. Don't need to worry about profile image because we've already done that as well. Okay, so that's brand. Let me quickly go to design. I'm going to pause in just a moment. So if you do have questions, hang in there, be there too. Now, quickly on fonts. Fonts are a really interesting one. With Razor, we use Google Fonts. You probably already know that. You have all these selections. How do you pick the right font? It's really simple. If you already have a brand, you already have a font. So use that font. You normally, in most organizations, you'll have 2. You'll probably have a serif font, which is a sort of curlier one, and a sans serif font, which is a non-curlier one. And so my encouragement is to use those. Now, will they be available on Google Fonts? Maybe not. They may be available on Adobe, which if it is on that, you can actually just go into Adobe, which I have here. I've got my Razor fonts in a web kit on Adobe, and I can just copy the project ID from that. And if I go into my settings, apps and integrations, Adobe fonts, I can just put in my font kit ID from Adobe in there, and automatically it will integrate with Adobe. So that's how to get Adobe fonts in there. There is a document to sort of explain that a little bit further. One of the most important things you do need to do, though, is that when you are putting fonts in from Adobe, you just need to make sure that you copy the right font family. So Razor, we've got a couple of fonts we use. We use Objective M2. So I'm going to copy the font family in Objective, copy it in there, and save my changes. And as you can see, it automatically will change there too, which is really cool and really simple. Now, I've made another edit to all of my fonts. Something I do for every single campaign is I change the font color. I changed it to a dark gray. It's a really good base to work from. So I just changed it to 222 or 62s, which is the hex value for it, but it just changed it to a dark gray as well. So that's really font family and color. They're the 2 most important things you just change initially. When it comes to sizing, You can do some different things. I often recommend do sizing later on in the stage when you can sort of have a look at what it looks like on the desktop and the mobile. One of the really fun features, though, another quick shout out to a Chrome extension. And this one I love to bits. I use it all the time. It's called Font Ninja or Fonts Ninja. And it's a little Chrome extension that if I select it, what it's going to do is I can just hover over any website and it's actually going to show me exactly what that font is. And I can even type something in that font and it will bring it up. This is great, is if one of the most important things when it comes to brand is sometimes you do not have the option of your designer around. And this is very normal. This is very usual. Sometimes charities and not-for-profits will use an agency, and so you may not know what fonts that you have. You may have a design team, but they are so busy with all these other big mass marketing projects or whatever, and they can't fit you in, but you need to just know what that font is. Using something like Font Ninja is brilliant because you can quickly go in, assess what that font is, and you can just use that. Now, typically those fonts will be found in Adobe or Google. If it's a custom font, there is an article on how to install those as well. But I'm a big fan of Font Ninja. Find it. It's also sort of super fun that if you want to find a font from someone else's site that you really, really love and think it will work really, really well, you can grab that and put that in there too. So what I've done in my headings, I've just gone through, I've sort of changed all those out. One of the things that I would recommend that you do with, so I'm just going to copy the font families in. One of the things that is also often good practice is with your heading 3, make that the different font. So in Razor's case, heading 3, we're going to use Mechanic, I think it's called, P2. I'm going to copy that in there. So for heading 3, I typically always just use the different font. So you have a standard font that works through all the headings and the paragraph, but for heading 3, I normally change it out. So you can simply do that as well. Totally recommend. As you can see, this takes time. So that's why I totally recommend making a template that already has all your fonts and brand changes in there that you can quickly go in and put and not have to worry about. So anyway, just a total recommendation. I think that would be helpful. All right, okay, we're done. Now, anything else in the brand settings? Let's have a quick look. Design, buttons. Okay, buttons are a funny one. With the new template, I actually really like the buttons. They're really clean and simple. But if I was to recommend anything with buttons, if you want the rounded text, it's all about padding. So a classic padding, if you do have size 14 for buttons, is use 14 and 48. And then rounded corners, 50. What you'll see different is I can just go save. And it will round them out. You can see in the preview if you go into your style guide that I did before as well. Sometimes you won't always see the preview in this little section, which is hence why I create a style guide for it. So just know padding is really important. You want that little extra bit of space outside of your buttons. Okay. I've been talking for ages, all on brand, and I'm hoping that you guys have some questions. So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to put it in the gallery view so everyone can sort of see each other. And if you've got a question, you just need to go to reactions, raise your hand, and first in, first serve. Does anyone have any questions in regards to brand and anything we've just seen just before? Sarah, love it.
More general. But
Sarah, what's your question?
How can you ask Sarah Frame? Me? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. Hey, Sarah, how you doing?
My moment of glory. Hey, my question is around. It's probably a bit early to ask it, but around testing and seeing what the donor sees. So when you set up all of these, brand fonts, all of that stuff. What's the most efficient way of seeing what the donor would see and testing things? And sometimes I get a bit lost in the labyrinth.
Sarah, that's such a great question. Hence the style guide. It's really, really helpful. I can't recommend it enough. if you go and create a style guide, so what I've done in Pages, and there's a video for this, and if you go into and create a page of style guide, literally all it is just putting your logos in there, your colors in there, your type in there, and your buttons in there. As you can see right now, all these have changed based on the colors I set in my brand settings. So automatically I can now just see a quick visual representation of what it actually looks like. If I open it up into a normal page, this is kind of what it would look like.
James, just a sec. We can't see your shared screen at the moment.
Sorry. No, you can now. And
yes,
now
you can.
Really small. Am I really small now? I'll go to, okay, that's a little bit better. Sorry, Sarah, I'm talking away. So one of the things that you can do within setting up a style guide is you'll get a real representation of what your brand's going to be looking like when it comes to the site. The nice part with making a style guide page is you can also look at what it looks like on mobile. So you just bring up that URL, which would most likely just be your campaign URL / style guide or whatever you call that page. So that's a quick little way just to show what things are going to look like. But one of the other things as well, don't ever be scared to just play. Like, it's at the core of it, it's just a website. So play around with it. One of the things I do sometimes recommend is basically create a new page and clone it from the home page. Because if you do that, therefore you can play around all you want with the home page. And then you can look at that without having to worry about whether those settings were locked in stone when I actually worked on the homepage. So that's one thing you can do as well. So that's my recommendation. The other one is always open your URL in a browser, in an incognito browser. The reason you do that is because sometimes you have caching issues, which will stop you from seeing the recent changes you just made. So I make sure you just open things in a incognito window would be good. But I'll get the testing site at the end as well. Sarah, great question. Any other questions? I said I'll take 5, but be warned, I talk for too long. Sarah, you put your hand down as well on that. Any other questions? Okay, people hanging in there. Give me some emoji to show me that you're hanging there. One of the reasons we did this was because I need to know what you're thinking in your head. Jack, thank you for putting your thumbs up. Yes, I love it. Do anything. Rebecca, thanks for the party signal. Good, keep it with me. Because if you put like a frowny face, I will see it and I will pause and stop. All right. Last chance for questions, otherwise I'm going to move on. All right, moving on. Now, what's your next step when you're actually creating an appeal campaign? The next one really would be just your regular housekeeping that you want to be doing in your site as well. So let me switch back over to the site, and you guys should see it. Let me just go into, I'll put it in speaker view. Okay, so the next one you want to do is just some general housekeeping. Now, what I mean by housekeeping is just putting in a bunch of settings that you may need just to make sure that your site, when you're working on it, sort of feels that it's responding well. So it just a little bit fuller. A couple of things that you want to quickly do. The first one is just go into settings and you want to set your payment and receipt settings. Putting in your gateway account early on is just going to remove that little blurb that happens in there on your donation form when you look at your site. When that blurb's there, it's just a little bit distracting. So if you just set up your payment account quickly, just by linking it, it means that you just won't see that little blurb. Now, good news is the site's not going to take live payments unless you switch this little switch here. So just leave that switch off and you're fine to have your payment gateway set up. There are a whole bunch of info on how to set that up as well. The other one you want to do is make sure you set up your donation receipt. So you can just go into configure receipt. There's a documentation I'll put up on this, but it's going to set up your PDF receipt. Now, this was a new little thing that we released not that long ago, and it allows a PDF attachment of a receipt within your donation receipt email, which is brilliant. Go in there, set it up, put your brand setting in there. That doesn't take very long at all. The next one you want to do is your donation form. Now, the first thing you want to do is with amounts. Now, this is completely subjective and it's really based around what you're going to be looking at when it comes to your campaign strategy. My typical recommendation is get rid of regular giving when you're doing an appeal campaign. Doesn't mean that doesn't need to be an option, but what you can do is you can set up another side campaign and have a link to that within, say, the donation form or a block somewhere that suggests to people, hey, would you like to be a regular giver? Click here. Takes them to another campaign in which you can then process regular donations. Now, why recommend that when regular donations are often the bread and butter of most charities? One, it's largely because it only helps people focus on one call to action. That's a little bit what you're kind of after when you're doing web design. You don't want too many call to actions, particularly when it comes to the most significant one is how are you going to contribute generously to this cause? Making it really clean and simple is helpful for them. So for most appeal campaigns, I remove regular giving, but then put in the campaign an option to go to another campaign that's solely built for your regular giving. Cool thing is just duplicate the appeal campaign, change the form so it's regular giving, and just change the wording. Really, really easy. So that's one of the things you can do. Also with button amounts, we do put in 5. The recommended is kind of 3. Again, around options. So you can sort of go in there and remove a few of those. We've got a bunch of documentation on how to configure your button amounts and how to put some conditional formatting in there as well. But that's a little bit easier. Make sure you save your changes, really important. Next one, just put in your fields. There's a whole bunch of documentation on how to use donation fields. There's some really cool things you can do with UTMs, particularly if you have people coming from an email or social media. And you can put in different links that will pre-fill the form in for you. It makes it even quicker. And settings, completely depending on what appeal you go with, but I absolutely love express donations. It is amazing. It just allows someone to quickly donate via their mobile. And because minimum 50% of people are looking at your site via a mobile phone or a mobile device, express donations is a wonderful user experience for them. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Really, really good little tool to put in there. Have a look. We've got some documentation on that as well, but I do recommend putting express donations as well. You can enable a default donation amount, which is helpful. And don't forget to also put in the thank you. It's amazing how many people forget just to put a little thank you message at the end of the form. The reason you do them, I think at the core of it, is that someone wants to know that what their donation did actually got processed. So if you don't put something, someone's kind of left wondering, did it process right? Whereas if they get a good thank you message, it's a great little experience for them. And also they can get a donation receipt email that comes from that too. So I recommend that. Another one you want to do is just make sure your social media is done. It will default on the titles and descriptions, so go in there and change all those. They don't take long, but when you share the URL on the social media, that's what's going to be coming up on your accounts. Another one is match giving. Now, if this is a match giving campaign, match giving is so simple to set up. You just need to go create a match giving period, put in these details. You can put some matching conditions in there as well, and some other things. There's the documentation on how to do that. But let me just mention one of the really cool features that recently just came out with match giving is that you can run concurrent match giving periods, which means that if you say, for example, have 5 different sponsors around your campaign and they've all chipped in for match giving, they can now all overlap. They don't have to go together. So you can have different match giving periods set up for different things that do different payment routing, and they can all overlap one another. This is kind of really, really fun, particularly if you're sort of doing things by hourly rate over a one-day period or things like that. So you can put match giving periods concurrently over one another. Really, really helpful feature. Check out match giving. I'll most likely put a match giving little to-do one in there very soon. I think there is one on our YouTube channel that you can check out as well. And lastly is going to apps and integrations. If there's any apps or integrations you need to set up, just get those done now. It's really, really simple, very helpful. Just get those integrations set up and ready. So that's a little bit of housekeeping. As I said before, I'm going to pause it because I want to pause as much as possible to make sure you guys are keeping up and are doing all right. So does anyone have any questions around the housekeeping side of setting up an appeal? – Raise your hand if you want. Hey, Jessica McPherson. Jess, can you do me a favor? There's a little button on your Zoom that says reactions, and you can click that and it says raise your hand. Could you do that for me? Yes. Jess, now you are second in line, but I'm going to take yours first, and then Sally Hetherington, I'll take yours after. So feel free to unmute yourself, Jessica. What's your question?
Oh, I've been making a bunch of comments in the chat, and I'm not sure if anyone's seeing them around some best practices. Like, for example, linking your logo on your Racely site back to your main website.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Love it.
That's a great tip, because people sometimes they get confused and they like to get back to the original site. The other thing that I'm big on is adding mobile phone field as an option, adding permission to market, right? So this is something I've been saying to you guys at Racely forever. You must have on your donation forms clear permission to market. And I don't know why you haven't done it yet, but it should be there, because otherwise, how do we know whether they want us to send them fundraising appeals in the future?
Yeah, such a great question, Jessica. And I think that's the nice part when you're looking through your forms. You can do custom forms. So I think in the docs we have a thing where it's a walkthrough video I did on the appeal campaign where I put that little bit in there on the form. We don't do it by default at the moment, I think largely because you can do it within custom fields. But it's a great suggestion. I love it. And it's really great where we do need to be asking people for permission around that marketing side. It gives you more opportunities with them.
The other tip is to have a checkbox with conditional logic. So a checkbox that says, is this donation on behalf of an organisation? And then if they choose yes, to have another box that displays where they can put the business name. That's a great tip, because it prevents people putting rubbish in the first name, last name field, which happens particularly at tax time. I don't know, for some reason, people think that making a $5 donation in their husband's business name is going to be some kind of tax advantage. And so you end up with rubbish contacts. Like you end up with business names where there should be contact names. So those are probably my key tips. And of course, you always want to be duplicating your campaigns, because that's quite a bit of setup to put into place to have created all those custom fields. So yes, I love your tip about duplicating campaigns.
Thanks, Jessica.
Yeah.
Love it. And
thank you.
Guys, put some stuff in comments. If you do have things that you want to add and share with others, do put in there. We're a great community. We want people to share knowledge to come in there. So thanks, Jess. Sally, what's your question?
Hi, I set up an appeal template this week, which I love, but I just have a question about the donation form. So I tried to set it up with the photos and some text, $10 can provide this. But when I looked at the mobile view, it really wasn't mobile friendly. Is there a way for me to work around that?
Oh, great question. The best one with mobile friendliness is mobile's tricky because everything's responsive. So most people, when they design a site, they'll design it within the desktop view. And the reason they do that is because I can see my full screen in a way, and I can design it for that. But the recommended is that your first in mind is always design for mobile first, which means if it's not going to work on the mobile, just pause and work out that first before you then move on to the desktop. Now, that goes for donation forms as well. So my encouragement is testing out your donation form settings to make sure it's working on the mobile before it's working on the desktop. One of the things you can do on that is what often will stump out mobile responsiveness is the sizing of your images. One of the things, that you may have already done this, so forgive me if I'm just saying it again, but I see it a lot where people will put an image in and put the next image in. One of the things in good web design practice is to make sure your images are the same size all the time for whatever set you're using. So a good example would be, say, sponsorship logos. If you put your sponsorship logos in on your desktop, it may look fantastic, but as soon as you're going to do your mobile, they're just massive. So one of the things you want to be doing is just make sure you have such consistent sizing that's happening in all that. Now for a really cool trick though, moving a little bit away from donation forms, but I'll get back there, is don't at all be hesitant to duplicate rows and have one for a desktop and one for mobile. Don't do it heaps because it's going to slow your site down a little bit, but not much, like nothing crazy. But one of the things you can do, you can hide rows from desktop and you hide rows from mobile. So if the styling needs to change for both of them, one of the things you can do is just duplicate the row out, design one for mobile, design another one for desktop, and just make sure you use the hide settings in there as well. That is found in that row settings that you can just see. Now, when it comes to donation forms, my recommendation is look at your images, make sure they're sized right, and make sure they're sized relatively small. If that's all fine, yes, there is some more editing you can do on your donation form. Most of the time, though, it's going to involve some CSS work. Now, what Kylie is on the call at the moment, Kylie and I are working on a little project to sort of help CSS become a little bit more accessible for people. Majorly because around donation forms. The reason it's a little bit locked in stone is because it's web design. It kind of needs to be. We can't give you every option under the sun because it kind of just ends up breaking. Using CSS can offer you different opportunities. So, Kylie, note that one down, and we'll put something in the description. And I'll get back to that on Sally, and I'll share some examples with you around donation forms that I've made that I think are beautiful and work for mobile and that. So hang in there, Sally. We'll make sure we get a response to you via the YouTube video or the email we send post this. Is that okay?
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. All right, Sally and Jessica, you can put your hand down on the reactions. Anyone else? Otherwise, I'm going to push on. All right, we're going to push on. Where's my mouse? All right, I'm going to change my view, speaker. All right, hope people are keeping up. Everyone keeping up. Emojis, shoot them through. Always wonder what everyone's favorite emoji is. One of the things we do at Raisley is in our all-in meetings, we kind of go sort of like assess yourself via your emoji. So if you want to sort of find a fun emoji in Zoom that's kind of representing you at the moment, do that. That would be cool. Okay, now we're going to look at the actual page. Oh my goodness, we're going to fly through some of this, but hang with me. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly open the live site because the first thing I want to look at is page layout, which is, to be honest, probably the most important step to do before you start building your site and getting into the page builder is understand the layout you want to use. And what I'm going to do is just quickly, sorry, I'm looking at one screen and another one there. What we're going to quickly do is look at how I've actually structured this appeal template in a really simple way, which I reckon you're going to love and realize it's actually not that hard. It's not rocket science, but you'll understand as I sort of go through it. So let me share the appeal here. And as you scroll down, a few things are happening. You've got some different blocks that are using, we've got donation forms that are there and things. Now, the biggest question is forget design for a moment. Just think content and layout. All you can see in this template is a continual looping of two things. The first is a why and a call to action, and the second one is community. All right, and they just keep repeating themselves. So let me explain. In your little hero bit that you get at the beginning, it covers the full width. And the very first thing you have there is a hero image that's going to define the cause. And you've also got a bunch of copy that's also defining the cause. So you've really at the core there got your why. The hero goes, this is why. What is the cause that's in there? This is why we're doing it, the big thing. And you've also got a call to action, which is the donation form. That's the primary call to action you have on your appeal site. Now, underneath that, now it's blanked out at the moment because I haven't put any donations in. That's actually a step I meant in housekeeping. Put some dummy offline donations in. It really, really helps. But what you have here is you'll have a donation stream, which is a widget that's been put in there that will roll across all the people's donations. So I term this community. So as I said before, you've got a why and a call to action, and then under it, you've got community. Because one of the things you want to be putting here is that the donor's not by themselves. The donor's with others contributing to this. And that's a really important step. No one realized going first, So once you've got that stream up, people are like, this is a great community thing that's happening. I want to get behind that. Now let's look at the next section. Again, we've got a little bit about the cause and about what's happening. Let's fight for rainforest together. We've got 3 images in here. We've got another cool little image blob here, more little text to just define it, and a call to action. Now this little button here is just going to directly link us back to the donation form if someone goes there, just via a hashtag anchor. So what is here, again, is a why. And this why is what the cause is, like what is actually happening with this cause, and a call to action. And then what do we have underneath that? Community again. We've got in here a little example of how someone individually has responded to this campaign and to this cause. These are great little moments to have because, again, they're showing from an individual perspective that they're behind this, that real people are actually behind this and want to support. So guess what? Next 2 rows, same pattern. We have here a why, and typically on this one is we've got more of an evidence in. So the why would be surrounded by what's the evidence of the cause and the impact it's going to be having. Again, you've got the little donate, which is going to go back to the major call to action here. And then what do you have underneath here? Our generous supporters. So one of the things you can, which is going to have another donation stream that's going to filter in there as well, which is a really, really cool piece. Last section, I'm just repeating myself. Again, it's another why. It's another why section, but this time on the bottom, it's about the why trust value that you have. We've put in here a little section that really defines the organization. And actually, this is one of my favorite little bits on the site because it's a core trust piece. One of the things, even what Jessica said earlier about having a link back to your charity's website from the icon. People still want to make sure that this is you. This is a great opportunity to send people back to your home website, which you can do, but also to define that you are a trustworthy organization. Again, it comes under a why a little bit with a call to action, find out more. And then what do you have underneath that? Community. Sponsor logos. So now not what the individual is, but now what the collective is around that as well. So you can put a whole bunch of sponsor logos to show that there's a collective out there that is also contributing and supporting this cause too. Now, a quick note on copywriting, just to give you some comfort. Copywriting is the hardest part of building a great campaign website. That might sound silly if you're sort of in the campaign builder kind of wondering what to do and where to go. But at the core of it, copywriting actually is really hard, which is why one of the things we encourage is do some hard work before you get into the fun stuff of design and page building. If you can develop your copy early on, that is a really, really helpful way just to speed the process up and get what you got going right. Knowing the page layout of why, so a why piece, call to action, and then community, and structuring it that way can actually be a really good framework to developing your copy. Biggest rule with copy, keep it short. Because the stats clearly show that the attention span on a landing page is no more than 60 seconds. That includes that person taking an action such as a donation form. So if you've only got 60 seconds with them, they're not going to see everything. They're just not. You've got to work out how can you guide them through a great user experience to get what they need in order that they can take the call to action. There's all sorts of other streams that you can do to follow up with people. You've got your email marketing, you've got social media marketing to put more content in there. So don't feel like your website has to say everything. It's just got to provide a whole bunch of trust and some core information around why your cause is going to be effective and usable. And then just really, really good call to actions as well. So keep it short, keep it simple, keep it to the point, and if you need more, you can also use the campaign blog feature in Razor as well, if you want to put the campaign blog in there to add more longer content. All right, I'm going to pause again. If you've got a question around copy or around how to structure out an appeal campaign, you can now put your hand up and I will answer your question. That will be very quiet this morning. It can be a question about anything. I'm super into cycling, so if you've got any questions about cycling, feel free to shoot those through as well. Any questions around copy or content layout? All right. I'm signing you all up to do the next webinar for me because you guys are out of questions. And so hopefully in the next little bit, we'll have some more. So do hold on to them and we'll get stuck in. All right. So now what do we do with page building? Let's see if we can fire on through this. Let's get into it. First thing we want to do is we want to go into our pages and we want to just make sure the header and footer are working. Probably the most important thing you start with. So simply here, we can just go into our section. We can put an alternative logo in there as well if you need something to work with color. So say, for example, I can just put the Raisley logo in. That's going to work. So make sure your header is working fine for you and also your footer. As you can see down in the footer, we've got color down the bottom. So I want to be changing that out. The campaign logo at the moment is automatically bringing in that logo, which I don't want it to do. So all I need to do is just add in an image block. I can put that just above it. I can now put in the logo I want, but I'm now just going to need to resize that. And I typically will go 140. Is going to make that pretty good. Let's get rid of that one and center that across. And we'll leave it. All right. Now it's cutting that off a little bit. I'll figure out why that does that in a little bit, but I won't worry too much now. But your header and footer, they quickly do. What a lot of people do ask is how do I do a transparent header as well? Typically, you've got two options. One is you can go into the row, into the block settings here, and just go to transparent or filled if you want a transparent header. The other way to do it is through CSS, which is actually really, really simple, and we'll put a little support doc on how to do that as well. But now I've done my header, I'm now going to go into my homepage. Now, a couple of things we do when we go into a homepage, just so you know, we've put some little blocks in here just to help you along in the appeal template. What you can see, though, is that these blocks are not going to be seen on your live site because I showed you our live site before. You can't see that block. The reason that is we put an attribute in here that says show is editor, which means that you can put this little code here in your attributes on any block that you want. And the only person that's going to see it is you when you edit it. So that's kind of how we do this little section, just so you know that's there. But if you want, you can always just get rid of it as well. Now, the first thing we want to be doing is we just want to change out some of our images is probably the first thing that we do. So I'm going to bin this one. Let's put this one in there and click. Awesome. Scroll down. I've got a couple more images that are in this little section. So I'm going to remove these. Doesn't take long to put the images in. It's just a great little practice to quickly do because what we're doing here is we're not reinventing the wheel. We're using a really, really, really good template that you can quickly make your own, which is just going to save you so much time. And then you just got to put some copy in there. Now, I love this monkey picture, but we're going to change that one out as well. As I said, typically around 5 images is what you're kind of after when you're working on a site. You shouldn't actually need too many more. The biggest one with images, make sure you optimize them, but get quality images. If you have to use stock, great. Even better, pay for stock. Images don't need to be cheap. Make the investment. You can get incredible images for like $100, but the reality is it may make a difference. So your photography on it is something really worth investing in. So we want to change this as well. Let's get rid of that. Put that image in. Super. And that's kind of most of the images in, but we'll put this one here. Why not? And you can always resize things as well, which is kind of fun. Now, just a quick note on the blob as well. I call it the blob. It's basically just a way in which we've done some CSS work to make the images, sort of the border around them, a little bit more sort of funky and responsive. The blob changes for all of them. If you want to not apply that, you can just go into your little paintbrush, which brings up your CSS, and just type in false over true and go apply and save change. And what it will do, it will actually just make your images normal again. I think it actually makes them all with a radius border of 15 as well. But I like the blob. I think it's kind of cool. You can do it individually for certain images if that's what you're after, but you're just going to need to do it through CSS. And I'll put up some CSS code in this in the YouTube vid description so you can actually see that too. But most of our images have changed. So I'm just going to quickly save that. Let's go into our site again. As you can see, the site's already looking completely different just by changing a few images. It's really actually that simple. And as soon as I go into copy, and if I change out my copy, it's going to change even more. So using the template just to put in your images and also to put in copy is a really, really helpful thing that you can do as well. Now, I'm going to show you one cool little trick that might be fun that you might want to do on some of your rows as well. So I'm going to do it on 2 of the rows. If I go into my settings and I'm going to go into the row settings here, I'm going to put in a different background color. So what this is going to do, I'm going to put in my purple, and it's going to put an overlay on it. Now, what I want to do with that overlay, I want it to be a little bit darker because right now I can't read the writing. So I'm going to change the background fade to a little bit more, about 80. And I'm going to change the distance. It's going to push up a little bit. I might drop that back to like 60. And let's save that. Refresh our site. And that's looking way more on brand. So really easy, just using your primary colors that you set before and using the background. Another really cool little feature that you can do is this one. If you go into the row settings down the bottom, fix background when scrolling. I'm going to turn that on. And I'm also going to switch that on for this one down here. If I go here. And what this will do, it'll add what we call a parallax effect to it, which just provides your site a little bit of animation variety, which is super simple to do. And as you can see here, amazing, all right? The parallax kind of works, and you can apply that to your different brand settings. Now, the nice part is it just makes the website feel a little bit more animated, a little bit more cleaner, and it's as simple as just flicking that switch in your row settings. A big one with animations, though, please don't do it for everything. Only do it for a few things, right? Because if everything's animated, the user experience gets degraded a little bit. So don't feel like you need to do it for everything. Just do it for a couple of things, and that's a little bit better as well. So that's some fun little things you can do. Let me also recommend, there's a great site, if you are after backgrounds, I'll put a link in, which you can copy gradient backgrounds as well to put on your site. I'll put a little link in our description on that if you're looking for different backgrounds that may be more colorful. What we often see is people just using very, very bland colored backgrounds when you have the ability to put in amazing gradients or a lot more textured images around that with some really, really simple CSS. I'll put a link in the description on how to do that and some other things as well. But there's some really, really fun things you can be playing with. Now, a quick little word on how we actually do this, because you may want to repeat this for some other campaigns as well. But one of the big things with web design is when you're looking through the structure, you want things to be able to flow through it. And one of the ways you can do that is actually adjusting margin settings. As you can see here, this image is actually covering both of the rows, but the actual image is only attached to the top row. One of the things you can do is if I go into the settings here and go to style, advanced. It's not in that one. It's in the column settings. Sorry. Da-da-da. If I go into the row and then into the column settings, as you can see here, for the column 1, which is this image, your top margin adjustments have been changed as well as your bottom ones. So if I scroll this back down, the entire thing shifts down again. Now, margin settings are a great way to do that little overlappy little section. And the reason you do that is it just helps the user flow into the next row. Again, don't overuse it. Again, one of the big cautions is make sure it works on mobile before you just apply it on desktop. If it doesn't, duplicate the rows out. Make one for desktop, one for mobile. And it's just a great little thing you can do. We've also applied that to these images. That's why they're just sitting above. If you go to advanced, you can also see that the bottom margin's been changed, which is what's actually bringing it up. So using margin adjustments can be a great little way just to make sure you can overlap some certain features that everything sort of links again together. Now, my last little tip before we jump out of the page builder is almost the most important, which people often forget, is we design these templates because we love you to use them quickly, so you can spend a lot of time working with your fundraisers personally and doing all that really sort of hard work in the background rather than spending all of it on page building. So one of the best shortcuts you can do if you love some of our templates is you can save the row as a you can actually save each row as its own template. If I say this hero image here, if I go into the little corner option that I have available and just go hero appeal campaign and save it. One of the really fun things, if I want to duplicate that on, say, a new page I want to be working on. So if I go into a new page, create new page, whatever it is, create, I can then reuse that row really quickly just by going to my templates, and there it is. This is one of the best shortcuts to use because you can do this to make sure that all of your site, if you're adding additional pages, has that consistency around it. This for peer-to-peer campaigns is exceptionally helpful because you often will have more pages, but with an appeal, you can also use it as well. So I really encourage saving things as templates and reusing them. You can then edit them out and save them as your own things, however you want to sort of work that in there as well. So that's kind of how you can save rows and templates, which is kind of fun. I really like that one. All right, I'm going to hand it over to questions. Does anyone have any questions around this? Oh, Sarah, fantastic. Sarah, I only said one, but no one else wants to ask questions. So, Sarah, fire away. What have we got? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry,
Yep,
yeah, I know it's only one, but I just had one really quick question about using the focal point for images. I seem to get in a mess with that. Like, so in your example, you had like the tree monster and you had three little images in a row, and the tree monster was in the middle one, and his head's cut off. So if you scroll up, go back up, yeah, yeah, the tree monster guy in the middle of your three. No, go up. That one, that guy. Like, how do you? Yeah,
I've dipped him. That's all right. He'll come back sometime. How you do?
So how would you make a focal point so you wouldn't end up doing that kind of thing, chopping heads off? And
yeah, great question. Really good question. Always remember, with any website, you run the risk of chopping heads off. The main reason is because everyone will open their browser in a different proportion, and because images and all website rows responsive, it all works on a calculation. So with a focus point, all you're saying is typically when you have the image, start it from up there. Now, it doesn't always work. It works most of the time, but not all the time. So sometimes you can cut it out. So what do you do if you're doing some testing and all that kind of stuff and it's not working? Well, the first one is do testing. Look at it on a mobile, look at it on a desktop, look at your live site in different proportions. A really helpful one is there's a really cool site I reckon I use this site like more than any other site. It's called What's My Viewport. It just shows me the pixel width of the window I'm working with. Now, what I've set it to is a HD, so 1920 by 1080. Now, typically in web design, most people, the stats kind of show that people view their site on a 13-inch laptop, which typically will default at 1148 by 764, I think is around that. Because of that, like what you see compared to what your viewer sees is different based on the screen size they're actually working with, which can make it a little bit complicated for you because you're like, oh, I hope it's working, depending on what screen size. But that's typically what responsive. So my first is test it, all right? Test the screen sizes, make sure things are working. If they're not working, you've got two options. Number one is resize your image. You may need to resize your image for it. My big thing is I resize your images often. If you are going to be using images on your website, 1920 by 1080 HD resolution, save any primary image like that. It will provide you a consistency. So save it in high definition. You don't need to do it often more than that. If you're really, really worried for your hero image, maybe you can do more, but I wouldn't worry too crazy about it. But HD resolution, set your images up. But if it's really frustrating, you change the size of your image. Second way to do it is create different rows for desktop and for mobile and for tablet. As I said before, you may not get it right for every one of them, particularly when you go to mobile. Suddenly, it's not cutting the head off; it's cutting the whole body off, and all we see is two legs. Then use on that end, just create another row for it, and just hide one for desktop and show one for mobile. That's kind of your quickest one. If the focal point does not work, it's not because you're crazy. It's just because the web, it's just web development size. It's trying to work out where to put this and how it's going to be responsive. It just won't let you do it based on the image's size. And that's the input size that you've made the actual image. So not the one that you set it in Razorly. So anyway, run on that. Is that all right? Super. Any other questions? Questions? Anyone? No, cool. All right, we're going to almost finish up, which is kind of fun. The only next phase is how do I go live on this? Now, one of the things you do need to always know is that your site is always live. It's always live. Anyone can go to your website. Now, the reason they can't is because they most likely don't know the URL. But anyone can view the website if they know what the URL is. But because you haven't shared it yet, therefore it's not live. What isn't live, though, is your payment settings being activated. That's not live. So it means that you can actually run a whole bunch of tests and not worry about whether or not the actual payment will process through. So the very, very first thing you do is make sure when you want to go live is that you make sure you know what the main button is here in payment receipts. Accept live payments is on. As soon as you switch that on, your site is live. It's ready to go. The other things that you want as well to going live is you want to make sure that your payment routing is set up. That's kind of another really helpful thing to do as well. You want to be going through all your links and your copy. So give the site to a friend. I always say share your site with colleagues. They'll rip it apart. They may hate it. They may love it. But one of the things I will do is I'll pick up on spelling mistakes and I'll tell you what links don't work. They'll always tell you that. So give it to someone else. They'll always give you those two feedbacks, hands down, every time. So find that. Next one to do is if you want to set up a custom domain, you can. And my last biggest recommendation is once you've set up an appeal campaign, test the living daylights out of it based on your user experience. If you've set up a message that's going to go out, that's going to harness the URL, then send yourself a test message. So I've got a plane going overhead of me. Send yourself a test message and go through the whole journey. Leaving the payment setting as not live and using Stripe's test credit cards is also a great way to use it as well. Put some test credit cards. See what the donation receipt comes back. Test it. When you're happy, run through it. Test it on different devices. Test it with different people. When they come back with design reviews, tell them I love you, but I don't have time for it. We'll handle that because everyone's subjective. But when it comes to things like, does something work or not? Does the link break? Does the user flow? You need that feedback a lot. So that's kind of one of the things I would really encourage you before sort of going live. But really, it's kind of easy. Once you're happy with it, send it. Always do know you're never going to be happy with a website. Like I'm never happy with it. There's always things to change. So be okay with that. Getting it out there with a clear message of what your cause is, let your cause and your organisation speak for itself. Don't get too caught up on it. It's just not perfect. People want to be generous and put your cause in front of them. And we're really hoping to see some great impact that comes out from your campaigns. All right. That kind of does me. I'm talked out. I've gone well over time, but so many of you have been amazing and have stuck with us. You're so good. I've got a couple of things to finish up on, but I don't want to stop any form of questions that you may have to come. Are there any final questions about anything to do with Raisley? Shoot them through. Last opportunity. Any questions? Now, either I've been really, really, really clear, or everyone's still completely confused and has no idea which way is up and down. I'm going to go with the first option because that's going to make me sleep well at night. Is that all right? Wonderful. All right, so some housekeeping things just to let you know of as well. I'm going to, some emojis. Good on you, people. Send them on through. Couple of housekeeping things to happen with Raisley at the moment. Number one, if you haven't checked out our YouTube channel, please go to our YouTube channel. It is going to be so full of content. It's in there. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like. And the best thing you can do is put comments in the videos. If you've got any question, if you've got any concern, you can put comments in those videos. Ask anything about Raisley and we will get back to you really quite quickly. So I encourage you, use our YouTube channel. The reason we do it is that you can have that comment feature and we use it. So please utilize comments. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're wrestling with and how we can help. The other thing is if you want to need more support, don't hesitate to reach out to support@raisley.com, or you can just access support through the little help icons when you're building your sites. The other thing as well is we've just released a new really cool activity tracking block, which is going to be really great for P2P campaigns. I'm going to be doing a series on P2P campaigns coming up to how to design some really, really good ones from start to end. That's going to be available on YouTube, but go and check out that new block. That's available there as well. And if you do have any feedback about how we can make these experiences and webinars better, don't hesitate to email me at james@raisley.com or contact us through support, because we'd love to hear from you, because we are here to help you bring your fundraising ideas to life so that you can make a better impact and a greater impact on people and planet. So thank you for sticking with Raisley. Thanks for using Raisley. We're here to help. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next webinar. Let us know whether this one worked or not. You'll receive an email very shortly after this with access to this, but I'm going to leave the morning there. Is that all right? Feel free to unmute yourself and just say goodbye so I know that you do exist before you jump out, but feel free to leave the meeting now. It's been great having you.
Thanks, James.
Bye. Thanks very much.
Good to see everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.